Welcome to the 18th episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. Today we have Harry Wright, CEO of the Bright Tide. Welcome, Harry.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name's Harry Wright. I'm the CEO and founder of Bright. We are a UK-based organisation working to help the private sector transition to a more sustainable and nature-positive future.
What is some of the work you do at the Bright Tide?
Yeah, so what we do at Brightside really is we work with companies mainly in the kind of legal financial industry, professional services sector, and we run annual programs. So we do things like accelerator programs where companies get to learn about new startups, new technology, new natural capital projects coming through. So it could be anywhere from sort of green, blue economy, seaweed farmers, for example, food regenerative farming, looking at nature-based solutions. So we run accelerator programs. We also do consultancy work, advisory work, and educational kind of workshops and talks as well.
You mentioned your Blue Economy Accelerator. Why is the blue economy so critical as we head towards net zero?
Yeah, really good question. So when I was at COP last year in October in Glasgow, one of the things I saw, which is really exciting, is this huge push for restoration. So a lot of tree planting, a lot of looking at things like peatlands, for example. But where I saw that we needed much more support and much more, we needed to accelerate the solutions was around the blue economy. So the blue economy covers really any kind of sustainable development, economic activity regarding the oceans. So it covers things like aquaculture, so seaweed and kelp and oyster farming, for example, looking at sustainable fisheries, offshore wind, renewable energy, and looking at things like shipping. And the reason why I'm trying to push economic development, sustainable economic development opportunities in the blue economy is that because the ocean is one of our greatest allies in the fight against climate change. It covers 80% of the world. It sequesters 25% of our CO2 emissions, and it's fundamental to our global economy. 90% of all trade goes through our oceans, and it has a net asset value of around 23 trillion. So it's hugely important. But within these different interesting industry areas like seaweed and kelp farming and many others, a lot of these new industry areas have both a economic positive output, a climate positive output as well, and also biodiversity and communities. So it really is the kind of model of the SDGs around the oceans. So we set the Blue Economy program up in March this year with the aim of helping up to around 17 startups go through a program where they get advice and support on a number of different issues, with the aim really of letting them become investment ready and becoming much more scalable. And the whole thing has just been amazing. It's opened my eyes to so many really interesting possibilities. I'm fascinated with seaweed and kelp, sea urchins, for example. I mean, there is so much opportunity to help the transition, to help with food security, to help with climate, to help create jobs, and also to help us get to a more sustainable future. So, yeah, I'm really passionate about the oceans and also the services which they can provide to us.
Do you plan on expanding your Blue Economy Accelerator program beyond the UK and the EU?
Yeah, definitely. So the next thing we're actually looking at is around the term principle of blue carbon. So looking at marine ecosystems, for example, like mangroves and salt marshes and seagrass, and helping projects all around the world become investment ready for blue carbon potential. So one of the problems here is that we've got big demand from corporates and the private sector looking to offset their emissions ethically and into projects which, provide good carbon credits. They are less risk averse, but also have those biodiversity and community benefits as well. So our focus on our next program is kind of extending the blue economy into the blue carbon market as well, and that'll be an international footprint, looking at sort of small island states like Fiji, for example, all the way to Southeast Asia, and India has some really interesting work going on. So yeah, we're going to be looking globally on that project.
What do you think is going to be the role of businesses and corporations around the world in achieving the net zero goal?
So the role of business is more critical than ever. And I say that because governments at the moment are continuing to let all of us down. They're not looking at their commitments. They are not achieving those commitments, and they're not delivering the outcomes that we need to get to 1.5 degrees and also to reduce biodiversity loss. So business has never been in a better role to really come into that vacuum and find leadership and help us deliver those solutions that we need. More importantly, there is more work being done and never more awareness that the importance that biodiversity and climate has to business as a whole. The risks of business not taking these issues seriously are significant. And that is part of the work we do, is around educating business on the risks of not doing anything about climate change and not doing anything about biodiversity, because they are intrinsically linked to the success of a successful global economy and a business as well. So we've done a lot of work on education, and then also looking at the opportunities in these new markets coming up, how they can fit, how they can revolutionize their supply chains to more sustainable supply chains, how important it is for business now to be actually taking action and delivering on their net zero commitments, both from a reputational perspective, from a litigation perspective, and also from a commercial perspective. So business is really starting to understand this, and we're working with them to accelerate the way to net zero and to a more nature positive future.
Across your programs and in your career, which startup did you find the most interesting in terms of their work towards restoration and net zero?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. There's so many exciting ones. I can talk through a few on the program at the moment. So there's this amazing business called Urchinomics, which is doing great work where they reduce overgrazing and over barren sea urchins. So sea urchins actually can destroy entire marine ecosystems, so there'll be nothing left. So what Urchinomics do is they remove these sea urchins. They have a really good market for sustainable seafood. And once they've removed these sea urchins, they then restore and regenerate kelp forests. And then all the biodiversity that was lost can then come back, and they protect those kelp forests. So that's just one example. There's so much work going in on seaweed as well. Seaweed can be used in so many different industries, from bioplastics to biorefinery to biostimulants to looking at animal feed, for example. We can eat seaweed. It's really healthy for you. So there's great businesses like Flexi, for example, which is looking at bioplastics, Kelp Blue, which is leading on so much of the work around biostimulants. There's a great seaweed farm here in England we work with called Biomalgae, which is the biggest seaweed farm in the UK. And there's also other really cool businesses like Sea Ranger Service, for example. And what they're doing is they're training young people to become sea rangers. So they're training them up in maritime skills and working with governments to do offshore work. But also they're looking to restore millions of hectares of seagrass by 2040. So all of these new ingenuity, there's a great business called Arc Marine, which is building recyclable and sustainable coral blocks, replacing unsustainable concrete blocks, for example, in offshore development, and bringing back biodiversity there as well. So if you have a look on our website under Blue Economy, you can have a look at these incredible businesses, which we desperately need to help accelerate these solutions to really get to a better place.
One more initiative you take at Wright are your hackathons. So could you just talk about your hackathons and how tech can really help solve some conservation issues?
Yeah, definitely. So as well as helping, startups, we're really passionate about how any individual from around the world can come up with ideas and can come up with solutions that can help conservation and can help the environment. So we've run a number of different hackathons and challenges over the last year, looking at solutions to helping reduce tiger poaching in India, for example, to looking at new algorithms and new tech solutions to reduce illegal wildlife trade online, to looking at tech solutions to reduce human-wildlife conflict in places like the Western Ghats in India, and also looking at new tech solutions to help monitor shark populations in the UK. So the way the hackathon works is that it's a kind of 2-day event where people from around the world will come together. you'll be placed into an international team, so people you've never met before, but very like-minded individuals. You'll then work on a challenge which you'll apply for, and then over those 2 days, you will submit a solution to that challenge. And then the aim is that we take those ideas forward to try and find a home for those ideas if they're kind of scalable and if we can find funding to develop it. So that's what we've done. We've done about 5, I think, over the last year and a half, with around 3,000 people. It's been fantastic. And the only downside to the hackathon model is, what do you do with these solutions once people have developed them? And that's kind of the gap where we're looking at how we can better advance the hackathon model.
What have been some of the most unique solutions you've come across these hackathons?
So we did a really cool one on blue sharks, for example. So that was a kind of sprint. So people had only about an hour and a half to come up with new tech solutions to help monitor sharks. So some great ideas from underwater algorithms. So you can take a computer image of the shark's face and use an algorithm to identify it, to looking at things like drone monitoring, for example, creating a cryptocurrency for sharks, because sharks can store huge amounts of carbon. That was called fin credit. We really like that idea. And, there's got to be some way we can do something with that. We had a whole range of really cool solutions from Tigerphon, which is our Tiger Hackathon. One was called Tigerbot, which was a kind of data scraper, which would scrape data relating to illegal wildlife trade for tiger parts online. And we're currently trying to develop that out. Through the Data for Wildlife Challenge we had a whole bunch of new data sets, which were social media posts of people selling illegal wildlife trade products, from parrots to cheetah cubs and many other different things. And we got some really good data, and a lot of work's been done now to develop those. What was interesting on our recent Western Ghats Challenge in India was that we had a number of solutions around creating an elephant app to help reduce wildlife conflict with communities in the Western Ghats and with elephants, creating like a warning system for communities, and which will give them much more information so they can reduce human wildlife conflict. And there's so many. We have a whole bunch of them, and the challenge we have now is, what do we do with all of these solutions?
Moving on to a more personal level, you were a lawyer before you joined the conservation sector. So what made you transition from being a lawyer to enter conservation and climate change sector?
Yeah, so I've always been, first of all, I'm passionate about conservation, always have been. And when I went into law, I actually worked a little bit in climate change law for a year. And then I went more into mainstream sort of corporate law and working with some of the big law firms. But I soon realized that working, 3 or 4 in the morning every day on mergers and acquisitions really wasn't what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I'm very passionate about trying to help find solutions to the biodiversity and climate crisis that we have. And what I found that when I was working in, the private sector, big law firms, and working with clients in many different industries, was that there were also a lot of people like me, a lot of people like you out there who really care about these issues and want to be part of the solution as well. And then I also saw how efficient the private sector is at solving problems that they have for their clients and for many other issues. So the kind of stimulus behind setting up Bright Tide was to try and draw upon the efficiency, the resources, and the expertise of the private sector, and to try and utilize all of that to accelerate the solutions that we need in the conservation and biodiversity world. Because I've always thought that we haven't been able to really connect those two worlds together. The NGO world is very much doing some fabulous work, but they require a lot of funding, a lot of resources to help. We need to get stakeholders engaged. We need to do so much, and the private sector hasn't really engaged as much as they could to helping forward a lot of the conservation work. So through Bright Tide, we can really bring those two worlds together, and we can utilize the private sector to help fast forward a lot of the work that needs to be done.
So what were some challenges you faced while making this transition and setting up Bright Tide? Well,
it's when you're in a career like law, for example, it's it's a great career to be in. It provides you with a good career. and there are lots of opportunities to, move forward with that career. So I think for anybody who is in a safe career, and you have bills to pay, you have a family to provide for, it's really quite daunting leaving all of that behind and jumping into the setting up a business or setting up a startup, especially during a global pandemic and economic insecurity that we have at the moment. So I had to be quite bold, I had to be quite courageous to leave behind a good career in law, to actually set up my company. But really, it's what I've always wanted to do, and I knew that there was an opportunity here to set up a company like Bright and to really follow my passion and to try and help as much as I can. So I think for anyone out there who is in a career they don't really like, or in a career where they're not finding purpose, if you can, and if you're in a position of where you think you can do so, please do try and follow your dreams and try and follow what you want to do, because we don't get much opportunities to do that in life. And I think you would probably regret it in future time if you never did that. So yeah, it was kind of out of passion, maybe stupidity, to be quite brave. So that's the reason why I set it up.
That was great. And talking about young people who are deciding to make this career shift into conservation, what would be your advice for them, particularly with skills?
Yeah, so I see young people as the future change makers. I think as a young person now coming into a world where climate change is impacting already horrendously across the world, and we're seeing the impacts firsthand. We're seeing biodiversity dropping at an accelerating rate. There has never been a more important time for young people with skill sets in many different industries to come into the let's call it the conservation world, and to use their skill sets to help work towards a more sustainable future. So companies now, they're desperately looking for people who have highly skilled, who are interested in sustainability, and there are a lot of job opportunities out there to join companies, good companies, where you can work and have a really good career in sustainability and have all the benefits of the private sector, but also know you're working towards a really good cause. I think entrepreneurship is a really cool route. I'm really passionate about young people coming out with new business ideas, helping them get funding, becoming, their own bosses and their own future leaders. There are lots of really cool NGOs that are doing great work in this space. So the opportunities are out there. I guess also never underestimate the importance, and I know you've done a lot of this, Anish, is around getting work experience, getting as much experience as you can on your CV before applying for roles, because it is competitive. But if you can prove on your CV that you've gone to maybe 4 or 5 different organizations, you've worked on many different projects, and you've demonstrated lots of different skill sets, that shows commitment, that shows enthusiasm, and it shows you're dedicated. And I think that is also really important, is never underestimate the importance of work experience on your CV to getting a job and getting to where you want to be. It's a long-term picture. It's not just a short-term picture. So that's the advice I would give.
That was very well answered. And that was my final question for the day. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and pleasure to be with you.